Hi, welcome back to our second half hour of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
I'm Susana Segat, and we have a special guest today.
I'm Alice Turkel, former member of the school committee.
Still Alice Turkel from the last half hour. So just picking up kind of where we left off and kind of segueing into some other significant issues of the day. Alice, you served on the school committee for 4 terms originally, that's 8 years, and then another 2 terms.
12 years, yeah.
For a total of 12 years.
That's all.
Yeah.
Over 18 years, though.
And one interesting thing, which I only kind of realized just now actually, was that for your 6 different terms, there were 6 different mayors.
I haven't counted it. Are you counting the times that Ken Reeves as a senior member
No,
served?
I'm not going to count the interims.
But
right?
they mattered.
They do matter, especially since some of them actually were extended for months at a time.
So I served under many mayors. Let's
Under many
put it
mayors, right.
Or with many mayors.
Right.
Let's say with
Yeah,
many mayors.
we'd like that
Specifically,
better.
actually, from 96 to 97 and on, it was Sheila Russell, then Frank Duhay, Anthony Galluccio, and then Michael Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the interim mayors, which was always Ken Reeves. And then it was, in the last 2, it was David Marr and most recently Henrietta Davis, right? Which sort of begs the question, because one of the topics
That's interesting.
of concern is how significant is the choice of mayor? And I guess both of
school
you can
committee.
really answer this, in terms of chairing the school committee and the functioning of the well-functioning of a school committee. Does it matter a lot? Does it matter a little? Does it matter not at all?
Well, I would say to an individual school committee member, it matters a fair amount. I'm not sure it matters in the long run in terms of big policy questions. When I was first on the school committee elected and I wasn't yet serving, Susana and I were called into a room by the CCA and we were asked, what
Count
would
for
you
yourselves.
like? No, we were asked, what would you like to see in a mayor? I didn't
Right.
know anything, and I said, well, I'd like somebody with experience on the school committee. And there was a member of the city council then who hadn't been on the school committee who got furious with me because did that mean I would never vote for them? I wasn't thinking about anybody as an individual. And it turned out the person who wound up being elected was Sheila Russell, who not only hadn't served on school committee, but heaven forbid wasn't on the CCA.
Right.
She was wonderful.
Right.
And she was a pleasure to work with. And she always reminded us whenever we wanted to do something or more money was what we always wanted, to do whatever our great ideas was, that the city needed water and that we were redoing the water treatment plant and just tried to put things in perspective. Yes, that's city water.
Visual aid.
But she was always of good humor and always fair and seemed to see her role as running the committee meetings, not as forwarding her agenda.
Which is really what a good chair should do in any body, primarily.
Yes, although I think it's tricky because in our structure, both as a city councilor when you're mayor and in the school committee, you're also a member and a voting member. And sometimes you care a great deal about an issue. And I would say many of those people who we're talking about saw their role primarily as the arbitrator, the person who ran the meeting, someone who tried to be fair, someone who tried to listen to individuals on the committee, the whole committee, and move things forward. Sometimes someone who's a bridge between the committee and the superintendent. That role differs, sometimes based on the relationship with the superintendent and the role. I think it does matter, but I'm not sure that in the end different decisions would be made.
Well, for me, what's useful about that role is that person is the one that can carry the school committee's message to the city council so that they
That's
can
right.
deliberate over the budget. Like they're the link to the budget because the city council has the budget, but they need to give the school committee a budget, and that's the person that needs to lobby for it. That, for me, that's where they're important. And what I always felt was important for them to remember when they were on the school committee is that they were 1 vote of 7. And just because they were chair of that and on the city council, that they weren't higher than the school committee members. That for me was important, that it was a team.
There's a related role as well that I've witnessed up at the Sullivan Chamber, which is that oftentimes if some errant city councilor just takes a shot across the bow against the school committee or the particular school committee members, it's often the mayor who is also serving on the school committee who will,
reminds them, yeah.
will defend and will say, well, wait a minute, hold on, that's not fair. That role is often also played by former school committee members who have become city councilors. They are often the first ones to say, we shouldn't be futzing with their domain.
Right.
I mean, that's their role. They were elected to do that, not us. And
Yeah.
so, but it's often it's the mayor who, as a current sitting member of the school committee, and former members of the school committee will often do that. And
Yeah, I
that's
think-
a
and I
very
think it's a-
moderating influence.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
it's a pressure that's constantly on the city council because although they do not have any say in the line items of the school department budget, and they do not have a say in their ability to increase it, they could lobby for an increase from the city manager, but they don't actually get to set the number.
Right.
They can only decrease it, and there's been no real voice to decrease it in Cambridge.
There
But-
was some kind of a kerfuffle that I never fully understood happened last year during the budget process.
There was a
where-
confluffle, but there was really no one who wanted the schools to have less money. So that's their one piece of power, and they don't, I don't think I think there's no desire to use that. Yet, when they deal with constituents, the largest part of the city budget is the school budget.
Right.
And budget aside, the schools get a lot more play in the news, and
Right.
not just Cambridge schools, but schools in general. And I think the city councilors feel or are pressured to feel responsibility for school decisions, which are not their responsibility, but I think that the pressure just stays on them. So the issue stays up, like what you're describing, and a good mayor helps moderate that,
Right.
helps people remember their roles.
Right. Right, and that's what's good about people who are on the school committee who move to city council, is that they know what that role is very intimately.
And I think they also remember that, well, first of all, I would say this, most of the decisions on school committee, the vast majority, are made quietly and unanimously. The ones that get remembered are the difficult ones.
Right.
And anyone who has served knows that the difficult ones are difficult. They are not easy. And it's not, so if you remember those moments of serving, you can at least respect that people have made difficult decisions. They didn't make them glibly
Oh,
or
no.
without.
Well, and that's the other side of the city councilors, is that those difficult decisions, constituents care about them, and they lobby the city councilors even though they should be lobbying the school committee.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where the pressure comes in. It's like, yeah, I have nothing to do with this, but my people care.
Well, they also often lobby afterwards. So not only are they lobbying the group that can't really act, but they're lobbying after the action's been taken. They're
Right.
lobbying their displeasure at something that's already
Right.
happened, and
What-
that's
There's
so
a
that's
lot of
tough
pressure
moment.
there,
It's
yeah.
tough- yeah, I
One observation that I'd make is that with the one exception of the days of rent control, where there was a lot on the line and it was become very, very emotional, people would be really supercharged over some of that issue. But for the most part, even what we think of as controversial issues up at the city council are nothing in comparison to the emotional level when you have parents who are very concerned about the
Their
welfare of their children.
Right.
And so the drama that potentially happens up at the school committee actually typically exceeds that if you'll ever see in front of a city council.
Right, and I think that's part of what makes the role difficult, because when there are those difficult decisions, you cannot please everyone, and you cannot do what everyone thinks is right. And sometimes
Well, because there's
the
no
peop-
consensus.
there's no consensus. There is about a lot of what we do,
Right.
but that just goes down and no one notices it.
Right.
It's the moments when there isn't consensus, and quite frankly, a lot of the decisions require a crystal ball. You say,
That's right.
we will make
That's right.
this move in hopes
That it will work out.
that this will be better or at least not worse
Right.
for the children of this district.
Right.
And we are thinking about the children whose parents are lobbying and advocating, and we are thinking about the children who
Whose
don't have an
parents-
advocate
right.
here. And we're balancing those needs, and it's difficult. I mean, one of the difficult issues that's going to be coming for the new school committee,
Mm-hmm.
the superintendent already showed us the old school committee, his intention, one plan, to start putting children in different level math groups starting after sixth grade. The school committee voted, the last school committee, to, no, actually not this past one, the previous one, to not have that kind of grouping start until high school, that would be not existent in these new upper
So
schools.
everyone learns the same math. is what
Right.
you're saying.
Well, in every subject.
Oh, every subject.
That
By
there
the-
would be no-
this is,
that
by
there
the
would be
way,
no-
where we're gonna part company.
There, right, but that's going to be, in order to do the plan that he brought forward to us, didn't ask us to vote, just showed us, they would have to go back and change the policy.
And what's the new one is that for math, they will teach different levels to,
After sixth
Sixth.
grade, children would be in different levels. And I'm gonna say, this is.
If there's a
can I-
need, though.
can I-
But that's not an
Well,
absolute
they'd
guarantee.
structure it too. I
Right.
mean, let's not go into the details, because of course,
No.
a plan change was in the fall to one committee, is not the one that's gonna come forward to the next. But just, this is an example about the advocacy, and if you'll just let me indulge in this. I have had many parents advocate over many years about why their child would do better in a class that is moving at a faster pace or getting a higher level, and particularly math, but other subjects too. I have never had a parent come to me and advocate for their child to be segregated or separated into a class for lower ability. I have never had a parent say to me, I have had parents say, my concern, I want my child to go to a really high power 4-year college. I've never had a parent come say, please create a way that my child can finish your school system and be prepared for taking a year of remedial work at a 2-year college, a year of remedial work that they will have to pay for at college rates but not get credit
Yeah.
for. No one's ever advocated for that. I don't believe that there are parents out there who want less for their children. So I believe we should have the high standards for everybody. Now, this is a big issue, and it's going to come before the school committee. And everybody, I think some of the people on this panel right here don't agree with
there's
me.
no consensus on it,
There's
right?
no consensus on this. But the point I'm making, and I don't want to get caught up too much in the issue, is that this is a classic kind of issue where you don't hear all the voices. And you have to decide for yourself, what do you think the other voices are saying? You can go out to communities, you can have people you know in the communities, you can do work, and you can do outreach, and the community can do it, and you can do it as an individual. But there's never going to be a balance between who comes forward and who doesn't. When I first got on the school committee back 18 years ago with you, Susana, after the first meeting, I heard people talking, and the old colleagues who'd been on already seemed to know who every single person was in the audience who was speaking to us.
Yep.
And I was astounded. I thought, the city has 100,000 people in it. Oh my God, how can they know everyone? And after a few meetings, you realize it's the same 50 people who come. Not 10 come this meeting, 12 come that meeting, but it's not the 100,000 citizens who come and speak.
That's right.
And so it's, that's part of the hard job, is you represent all
Everybody.
the families, and you want the schools. It's very important that the schools feel positive to the kind of people who come out and advocate. You want the schools to remain a school system for everyone across race, across economics, across parental education. But it is also important that they function for the children whose parents don't come out.
All right. So, very well. I would like to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about some of the events of yesterday, if that's okay.
Yesterday, Boston inaugurated a new mayor.
Actually, everybody did. I saw Senator Sal DiDomenico and one of the people of his staff, and they were like doing inauguration hopping, from
Well,
Cambridge
I
to
was
Boston
listening
to
to
here to there.
NPR, and I think I learned something. After the mayor of Boston gets inaugurated, he says the little pledge that we all say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then he does it for the entire
Swears
city
in the
council,
council.
and they just say it as a chorus.
Really?
Think how much shorter the ceremony could be. This is an innovation we should bring to Cambridge.
This is the new innovation agenda. Here we go.
We found
I'm telling
something
you.
Boston's better at.
Yes.
All right.
Well, also, I was very impressed by his speech because he talked a lot
Did you go
about
see it?
family. No, I was listening on the radio. About families and children who have experienced trauma. And at one point he said, imagine if all those children and families who experience trauma could get the services they need. And I don't know if you know this, but Henrietta Davis and I worked hard on the issue of trauma, both the last term and this term, and recently working with the Kids Council, did a big forum on trauma here in the city. We have one of the leaders in
good
trauma living here in Cambridge, Susan Cole, who
Yep,
works for
it's
PAC.
fantastic.
And we really need to do work about this. How do you make the whole city, but particularly our schools, what we call trauma-informed, places that are not traumatizing and re-traumatizing children, but places that know how to respond to children who've had these experiences. There have been surveys done, and up to 40% of adults will, reflecting back on their life, show that they've experienced a significant trauma before they turned 18. Now, not everyone, of course, is therefore traumatized, but many, many children are, and
Yeah.
it changes how their brains function. And so anyway, but
And it's
I
very
was,
important because how we discipline children when they act out, we don't, to not consider the trauma part of it is really
it's
harsh.
devastating. And I'll give
Yeah.
you a little simple example of that. Sometimes children are asked to be removed from the group. Go sit over there, go sit in the
Yeah.
hallway, go to the office, whatever it is. These children
Happened to me.
often, right.
Yeah.
Well, these children often need to feel
Close.
comfort and connected. And not only do we ask those children to leave, but then at some arbitrary time we say, just come back. We do nothing to help them reintegrate. These are kids who don't have, for whom we are doing damage,
Yeah.
even though we may think we're making things better. So
Or suspending them when they shouldn't be suspended. The
that's
teachers
even
need,
more.
need good tools to
the
deal with it.
teachers need tools, they need to understand, and they need to have a culture where the faculty feels like they can have the kind of support they need. At one point, the Moore School got a grant working on trauma, and the faculty heard someone speak about it, and then they had enough funds to do something about it. And they hired the person to come and be in the school one day a week after school, so teachers could go and say, this happened,
That's
what do you
fantastic.
recommend? And that helped both in their being able to deal with 9/11 when it happened. There was a horrible parent murder-suicide at that school, and the teachers were prepared because they'd been doing this work. And I don't think we do nearly enough to help our teachers cope with those things. Anyway,
Oh, so back
All
to,
right.
yeah.
Back to inauguration.
Speaking of
Great hope for Mayor Walsh.
of a lesser form of trauma,
Yeah.
yes,
and a much lesser crisis, but of some interest, what took place yesterday were the inaugurations of the Cambridge City Council and of the school committee. And I managed to make it to both of these ones, and as many of you know, one of the really the primary order of business on the inauguration day for the city council is the election of the mayor, which is often made controversial. Sometimes it actually extends for weeks, if not
Interminable.
months. Interminable. I think was it February 22nd, which is not that late. Was the last time when Henrietta Davis was elected at actually a special meeting of the city council. But oftentimes it actually happens on the first day, and actually that's what happened yesterday.
And I complain because it takes too long to elect a mayor, but now I wish it had taken longer because it was a hard meeting, I thought.
Well, it was badly played by some of the new councilors, I dare say, but it was interesting. They actually did take technically 3 ballots, but that doesn't even begin to describe.
So tell us a little bit about it. Were you
weirdness.
there, Alice? Did you see any of it?
I was not in the room. I got a call from a retired city councilor who described to me briefly when I asked a question. That person said, "Go read Robert Winters," and because I was being interviewed by him tonight, this afternoon I did go and read Robert Winters, and I was struck. Now I wasn't there, so I didn't see the fireworks or the emotion. That they did get a mayor, that they got a mayor quickly,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I thought that Councilor Denise Simmons showed
Tremendous poise.
Yeah.
poise,
And-
restraint, and really
Well, we should actually tell people.
tell what happened.
Well,
More or
Tell
less
what
well,
what
first
happened.
of all, I just want to say that
I was impressed,
the
though.
most important part of this meeting is that all of the counselors made Denise Simmons look really good.
In the end,
Well,
absolutely.
and herself, and
Oh,
herself.
Absolutely.
yeah, of course,
She-
well, of course
no.
she made herself. She's,
No,
well,
no,
she does, she's
made
a
gold now.
classy
She's
person.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So now I should say in advance that I had, we always hear rumor in advance about what's expected to happen. People sort of, sometimes they're kind of playing you a little bit, but people like to leak bits of information. So let me tell you what I had heard.
Yeah, tell us all.
This is what was supposed to happen the way I heard it.
All right.
Was that it was somewhat split 4-4 with a swing vote. It was supposed to be David Marr, Dennis Benzan, Mark McGovern, Tim Toomey voting for David Marr, That's 4 votes.
Okay.
And then Leland Chung had been really driving hard to generate votes. So I'd heard Craig Kelly had said, oh, I'm going to be voting for Leland Chung, told all his supporters. I'd heard that Dennis Carlone and Nadeem Mazin were also on Leland's side, and that Denise Simmons was sort of the swing vote, right? And then
The kingmaker.
well, potentially the kingmaker, right? The queen shall be the kingmaker in this case, right? But that if they couldn't get 5, that one of the others from the Chung side, I heard it was Dennis Carlone, but I don't know, was then supposed to switch over, and then it would make 5, and it would be David Marr. So that's what I'd heard was going to happen.
And that was going to happen fast.
It was going to happen
Yeah.
fast. It was either going to be the first ballot, if not then on the second ballot. Okay, so what happened on the first ballot is that unexpectedly, Craig Kelly actually voted instead for, let's see, for Denise Simmons as opposed to Leland Chung, whatever. But anyway, after the first ballot, it ended up with 4 votes, as expected, for David Marr, 3 votes for Denise Simmons, right, and 2 votes for Leland Chung rather than 4, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that was the end of the first ballot. Okay, fine. So now what's expected, there'll be some shifting around, then they'll settle it in the second ballot. So the second ballot happens, they run through it again, and sure enough, it's 4 votes for David Marr, 4 votes for Leland Chung, and 1 vote for Denise Simmons. So that's what I had heard, the rumor, in the days leading up to it. And then it just became crazy. The rule is that the vote is not finalized until the city
Gavel.
clerk gavels the vote
3
closed
times.
with 3 strikes of the gavel. And there's often a game of brinkmanship that goes on. So there have been some really famous examples of this over the years where there's some vote changes. But I've never actually seen it happen that, or even read about it happening, where somebody not only changed their vote once during a ballot, but then changed it again. Right? It was like they weren't going to end the ballot until they had just sort of gone through every possible machination. It was really bizarre.
What started that? Do you know?
There's some indication that there was a game being played here to kind of delay the vote in order to buy some time so that Leland could get a 5th vote, Leland Chung. That hasn't been verified. So I didn't know whether it was going to happen or not. But what happened is initially there were, on the second ballot, it was 4 for Marr, 4 for Chung, 1 for Denise Simmons. And then Denise Simmons says, I'm going to, now let's settle this. I'm going to go over and I'm going to change my vote to elect David Marr.
So at that moment, we could have gracefully
Right.
ended the night.
We could've
That would have
just-
been a beautiful,
could've-
graceful
Well,
moment.
it was in the morning, but yes, we could have closed the morning and gone to the collation and had some fine food and whatnot.
Because now David has 5, he could win.
He's got 5, okay? So at this point, it's like that's where the weirdness begins. So Leland Chung then switches his vote to Denise Simmons.
Takes the vote away from David.
Right. Craig Kelly
The
then...
vote that, just to be clear for our audience watching, so Denise
No,
has given David the
The
5th
winning
vote.
Now-
Then another member says, no, I'm going
We
to
don't
move my
want-
vote over
No,
to you.
Leland had currently been voting for himself, so he switches to Simmons.
Right, which,
Then Craig Kelly switches from Leland to Simmons. Dennis Carlone then switches from Leland to Simmons. Nadeem Mazin then switches from Leland to Simmons, putting her at that point. Now we're back to 5 votes for Marr and 4 for Denise Simmons. And then it's like, now Denise, would you now like to vote for yourself? So she says, well, now that I've got
Of
this,
course.
sure, let's do that. So she switches to herself, putting it up 5 votes for Denise, 4 for
Another
David
moment.
Marr.
another moment when it could have just ended.
It
Could've
could have
just
been
ended right
beautiful.
there. And in
Yep.
fact, just to amplify it a little more, then Dennis Benzan says, well, I'm going to also vote for Denise Simmons, putting her up 6 votes to 3.
And may I say something? It's not infrequent when something happens like the election of a superintendent, say, that after it becomes clear who has the majority, before the vote
Then
is
they
actually
all
put
go
in,
over.
then
Maybe
everyone
everyone
goes
goes
over to say
unanimous.
for goodwill.
Absolutely
will.
right.
And so
Absolutely.
one could have taken this moment to be the goodwill moment.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. But then it got really weird. So the 2 of the people who had shifted their votes from Leland to Denise Simmons, now that you figure they should be thrilled, Denise Simmons got it, she's up 6 to 3, we're done, right? The people who had switched to Simmons then say,
Never mind.
never mind, I'm going to deny it, And
I didn't really mean it.
I didn't really mean it. So Nadeem Mazen distinguishes himself by then voting for Craig Kelly to take a vote away from Denise Simmons, and Dennis Carlone follows and does the same, which now brings it down to a deadlock of 4 votes for Denise Simmons. I mean, curiously, it's the same people who had actually chosen to change their vote to her, then take it away.
And why Craig and not Leland?
I don't think I think it was because it was just some gamesmanship where nobody was really going to elect Craig Kelly, so it was like a placeholder in a way. I think it was just to buy time to delay things so that maybe they could somehow manipulate something next week or something for Leland, I guess. That's
So
my
Denise
guess.
was as high as 6 votes at that
She was
moment.
up 6-3, but then at this point here, then it had gone down to 4 for Simmons, 3 for David Marr, and 2 for Craig Kelly.
And Marsden and Colon had both been for Simmons?
They had done the double switch. They
They
had switched to
switched, yeah.
Simmons and then
And then-
away from Simmons. This may take some time for people to forgive. And then they say, okay, then they end that ballot and they go to ballot number 3. In ballot number 3, it goes down with 5 votes for David Marr, 3 for Denise Simmons, and 5 for Marr, 2 for Leland Chung, and 2 for Simmons. So again, once again, we got 5 for David Marr. It could end right there. And then we start to go into the same process. Leland now changes to Simmons. Carlone then changes to Simmons, putting it up at 5 for Marr and 4 for Simmons. And Denise Simmons is put in the situation now where she can sort of go through this again, but she says, that's it. So she actually left 4 votes on the table and did not change her vote from David Marr.
You
And
know,
that's
probably
what
this
settled
stuff might happen in private. It's interesting that it happened in public.
It
I mean, you
was-
can
it
imagine
was
this kind
weird.
of stuff happening normally.
We're going to have to
I-
fade
Okay.
out here, though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh, I just,
So anyway, that's what happened. Oh, we're sorry, we have to end the show here, okay? But so anyway, that's another week, and we'll speak more.